So most guitarists, especially if they're self-taught guitarists, when they learn to play lead, the first thing they learn is the minor pentatonic scale. And usually the first thing they learn is box pattern number 1, which is okay. I'm sure anybody who's even spent a week trying to learn lead knows box pattern number 1. Now, the purpose of this video is to get you out of what I call the pentatonic rut. And what is the pentatonic rut? Well, if you're new to playing lead, you may already know the box pattern, or the box pattern number 1. You may know all 5 box patterns. You may be able to, go seamlessly between the two. That's very good if you do. Or you may just only know box pattern number 1. Now, before we go further in this video, it's basically mandatory that you know all 5 shapes up and down the neck. So you know box pattern number 1, box pattern number 2. The small phrase I just played there incorporates pentatonic pattern number 5 with pentatonic pattern number 1, excuse me. The pentatonic rut is basically, it doesn't matter how long you've been playing. I've heard of people who've been playing for 15 years and they're still playing the pentatonic scale. There's no spice in their scale, it just starts to sound the same. But there's really no reason, if you're just playing straight rock or blues rock, there's no reason to get out of that because it sounds great in rock and roll. But you want to be able to move yourself out of thinking of lead playing as in shapes and rather start thinking of it in either notes or intervals. And so I myself at one point was stuck in the pentatonic rut. So there's 2 steps to getting out of the pentatonic rut, and we're going to concentrate on part 1 in this video. Part 1 is we're just going to stick with the pentatonic scale, but we're going to open up some new possibilities, and these exercises will help you start thinking of it in terms of intervals instead of box shapes. And so, and then after part 1, you can move into the minor scale, the natural minor scale, the major scale, and the modes. I'm sure anybody who's even started to learn lead, and especially those of us who are self-taught, have learned a lot on the internet, and you'll hear things about modes and harmonic minor, etc. Well, modes are basically just different variations of the 7-note scale. If you know the minor and the major scale, you already know 2 modes. So before we delve into that, let's get into some exercises that helps you to, number 1, think in terms of intervals to prepare you to start learning different 7-note scales, and also to basically get you out of thinking in boxes. Okay, so again, before we go further in this video, please learn all 5 pentatonic shapes. And again, we're in the A minor pentatonic. Okay, we're in the A minor pentatonic, and you should know all 5 shapes before going further. So the first exercise is to use 1 string. Just 1 string. You can use any fingers you want, but try and play a melody with 1 string using the 5-note pentatonic. And for all these exercises, if you want to add the blue note, go right ahead. It's just 1 note, it's just 1 extra note, and it adds a lot of spice to your playing. So again, the first exercise, we're going to do 1 string. And so taking the example of the high E string, the open E is a note in the pentatonic scale, in the A minor pentatonic scale. So you just put on an A backing track, A minor backing track. You could use major as well. That's the thing about the pentatonic scale. It works for both. And just start trying to create a melody with just 1 string, just this string. So it might go something like, okay. Again, you can go all the way up the neck past the 12th fret. It's just a repeat. okay? You want to do that for each and every string, and I would suggest spending 15 to 20 minutes every practice session doing that for at least a week. And the purpose of this exercise is it boxes you in. It forces you to think in terms of intervals. Now, what are intervals? This is an interval, for example, the blue note and the pentatonic scale. The blue note is a half-step interval. Okay, that's a half step. A whole step interval is just that. It's, again, G to E. That's a whole step. The next interval is a 1.5 whole step, which is, the pentatonic scale uses just a whole step and a 1.5 whole step interval. And it's very important to familiarize yourself with intervals. And you can't learn intervals by doing box patterns, because you can't really see the intervals when you skip from string to string. For example, you know, if I go from that's going from this string to that string. And by the way, this video does not have fret finger angle, so you can't really see what my fingers are doing. Part of that is because I don't have the equipment, but at the same time, I think it's very important that you learn by ear. Guitarists who are self-taught, the most successful of those guitarists are those who actually learn songs by ear instead of you know, reading tabs or doing video or looking at video tutorials. And that's the purpose of the first exercise, is to get your ear familiar with different intervals. So anytime you hear this interval, you know it's 1.5 whole steps, and it doesn't have to be that. It could be, but that's how it sounds like in a whole step interval. That's what a whole step interval sounds like. It's very important to understand your intervals. A half step interval, it's not just those notes, it's every single interval through the whole neck. And that's what scales are all about. That's what lead is all about. It's about intervals. It's about what separates two notes or a sequence of notes. The second exercise the purpose of the second exercise is to open up new possibilities for your lead playing. And that's essentially, you can use all 6 strings. However, you want to use one finger at a time. So, you know, you want to first use your first finger, and then your middle finger, and then your ring finger. You want to use one finger at a time. And again, put on an A minor backing track. Take one finger at a time and start to try to create a melody with one finger. So for example, I'm going to use my first finger. It's very difficult, and so you see I kind of cheated at the end there, but you want to stick with one finger, and you're going to be doing a lot of slides. You can't hammer on or pull off really unless you're pulling off an open note. I threw in an extra note there from the A minor scale. But you want to do that, again, for 15 to 20 minutes a day for 15 minutes for about a week. And that really familiarizes yourself with different possibilities, because when we do the pentatonic, doesn't matter which shape, all we're doing is using the first and the third finger mostly. Very seldom do we ever use the pinky, and of course you want to be able to do that with your pinky as well. We only use the first and third finger, and so we're used to these kinds of intervals. And even when we have a 1.5 or 1.5 step interval, we still use the third finger. Because when you get into major scales and 7-note scales in general, you're going to be using all 4 fingers a lot. And so you want to practice those two. And the very last thing is not really an exercise, it's more of a extended scale that you should be using instead of just... okay, you should be using not the box pattern, but you should be using all box patterns at the same time. So, you know, even if you know the box patterns, you don't want to be in a position where you're soloing one box pattern and then move to the second, or even move to the third and then back to one. So you don't want to be doing something like, and then you want to be able to freely move around the whole neck at any time. And so here goes the scale. It starts, you can start with an open high E, you can start with a G, you can start with the A, but it's basically slide, slide, okay, so you're all the way on the high E string and then go back, slide, so you want to use that extended solo. You want to be very fluid in you know, being able to freely play whatever note you want at any position in the neck. And that's basically it. That's part one. And once you're able to familiarize yourself with part one, once you can play a solo with just one note or just one finger across all strings, or rather not one note but one string, and you're able to freely do the pentatonic across the neck, then you're ready for part two, which is, you know, the first thing in part two is to learn the A minor natural minor scale, which is just two more notes, and then the major scale, and then the modes, you know, so eventually you can mix in the major, minor, the modal characteristics with the pentatonic and do stuff like, okay, that's a mixolydian, that small phrase right there is mixing the mixolydian with the blue scale, which is just one note more than the pentatonic scale. And that's basically it.